The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah was supposed to hold. It is not holding. Hezbollah says it carried out a rapid wave of consecutive operations over the past day, including drones, rockets, artillery, and roadside bombs, though the exact tally varies across reports. Hezbollah described the attacks as heavy and consecutive military operations and said they involved armed quadcopters, explosive-laden drones, and precision strikes against Israeli logistical and military assets. Israel has acknowledged continuing Hezbollah fire near its forces, even as both sides keep accusing each other of violating the ceasefire. But the scale of what Hezbollah is claiming and what happened to an Israeli officer on the same day tells a different story about where this front is heading. Hezbollah claimed a series of drone strikes on Israeli positions, barracks, and command sites, but those specific battlefield details remain largely at the level of the group's own statements. The group also claimed it detonated explosives against an Israeli military bulldozer near Hadatha. If Hezbollah's account is accurate, the bulldozer attack would point to a repeated effort to disrupt Israeli engineering and logistics activity in the area, not just random fire, but systematic targeting of the infrastructure that allows Israel to hold and expand the territory it controls. On Friday, an Israeli officer was killed in a Hezbollah explosive drone attack in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military identified him as Captain Mao Israel Rekanati, a 24-year-old platoon commander in the Golani Brigade's 12th Battalion from the settlement of Itamar. He became the 7th Israeli soldier reported killed in southern Lebanon since the April 16th ceasefire took effect, and the 20th since the broader escalation linked to the Iran war. 7 soldiers killed during a ceasefire. That number alone tells you what kind of ceasefire this is. The front line in southern Lebanon is producing casualties at a rate that no ceasefire framework has been able to stop, and each death makes the political pressure on both sides harder to manage. In a separate tally, Hezbollah later claimed 33 attacks in a single day, a figure reported by Anadolu but not independently confirmed at wire level. The group has increasingly relied on drone warfare and precision attacks during recent confrontations along the northern front. The shift from rockets and mortars to armed quadcopters and explosive-laden drones represents an evolution in how Hezbollah is fighting. Drones are harder to detect, cheaper to replace, and can be launched from positions that are difficult for Israeli surveillance to track. For Israel, the battlefield in southern Lebanon is evolving from an artillery and rocket threat into a live drone war. The escalation is not one-sided. The Israeli military continued carrying out airstrikes across southern Lebanon, despite the ceasefire extension. The army also issued evacuation warnings to residents of multiple villages in southern Lebanon, signaling that more operations were planned or already underway. Evacuation orders during a ceasefire are not routine. They tell the civilian population to leave so the military can operate without the constraint of proximity to non-combatants. According to Lebanese authorities, nearly 2,900 people have been killed and more than 8,800 wounded since Israeli operations intensified earlier this year. Those numbers describe a conflict that has already produced devastation on a scale that most ceasefires are designed to prevent. The toll includes combatants and civilians, though the breakdown has not been fully detailed in public reporting. What is clear is that the people living in southern Lebanon are caught between an Israeli military that continues to operate inside their territory and a Hezbollah force that is using the same villages and terrain as a launching ground for attacks. Hezbollah also claimed a drone strike on an Israeli troop gathering near Kayam, presenting it as a direct response to what it called repeated Israeli violations. Kayam sits close to one of the most heavily militarized stretches of the border and has repeatedly emerged as a flashpoint. The Israeli military has not officially commented on the specific claim. Against this backdrop, the United States announced that the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah would be extended by another 45 days. U.S. State Department spokesman Tommy Pigot made the announcement on X. Hezbollah did not appear to endorse the extension, and fighting on the ground quickly undercut the diplomatic message. But extending a ceasefire that both sides are actively violating does not change the conditions on the ground. It changes the diplomatic label on a conflict that is still producing casualties, airstrikes, and drone operations on a daily basis. The extension buys time. It does not buy peace. Washington is preparing another round of direct diplomatic engagement aimed at containing the crisis. According to the State Department, Israeli and Lebanese representatives are expected to hold U.S.-mediated talks on June 2nd and 3rd. Before that, military-level discussions between delegations from both countries are scheduled at the Pentagon on May 29th. The talks are expected to continue on parallel political and military tracks after the May 29th Pentagon meeting and the June 2nd to 3rd political discussions. But scheduling talks while both sides are conducting military operations against each other creates a dynamic where diplomacy and fighting run in parallel rather than in sequence. The evolution of Hezbollah's tactics deserves attention beyond the daily tallies. The group is no longer relying primarily on rockets and artillery to hit Israeli positions. It is using armed quadcopters, explosive-laden drones, and loitering munitions that can be directed at specific targets with precision that rockets cannot match. The killing of Captain Rekanati was carried out by an explosive drone. The strikes on the Yara barracks and Albiad command headquarters used drone swarms. The roadside bomb detonations against bulldozers are combined with drone surveillance to time the attack. Hezbollah is fighting a hybrid war that blends conventional tactics with unmanned systems, and the Israeli military is adapting to a threat that looks less like a militia and more like a networked force. The ceasefire's credibility is now hanging on a thread that both sides are pulling from opposite ends. Hezbollah says its attacks are retaliatory, triggered by Israeli violations of the truce, ongoing operations inside Lebanese villages, and strikes that killed civilians. Israel says Hezbollah is using the ceasefire as cover to rearm, reposition, and launch attacks against its forces. Both claims contain elements that are verifiable and elements that are not. What is verifiable is that the fighting has not stopped, the casualties are still mounting, and the ceasefire is functioning as a framework that both sides reference while neither side fully observes. The evacuation warnings issued by the Israeli military tell you where this is heading. When an army tells civilians in multiple villages to move a kilometer away, it is signaling that heavier operations may be coming. The fact that those warnings came on the same day Hezbollah claimed 19 operations and an Israeli officer was killed means the escalation cycle is accelerating, not decelerating. The ceasefire extension gives diplomats 45 more days. The battlefield is not waiting for them. 7 Israeli soldiers killed since the ceasefire began, 20 since the broader escalation started, at least 2,951 dead in Lebanon, more than 8,800 wounded. Hezbollah is claiming attack tallies that range from the high teens to the 30s in a single day, a sign of how quickly the northern front is heating up even if exact counts remain disputed. Drone strikes on barracks, explosives under bulldozers, an officer from the Golani Brigade dead at 24, and a ceasefire that was just extended for another 45 days, even though neither side is observing it. So this is where the Lebanon front stands. Hezbollah is escalating. Israel is striking. Drones are increasingly replacing rockets as one of the most disruptive threats on this front. Civilians are being told to evacuate. Soldiers are dying. Diplomats are scheduling talks, and the ceasefire that is supposed to be holding exists on paper, in press releases, and in diplomatic language, but not on the ground where the fighting is actually happening. The Lebanon front is not cooling down, it is widening, and every day the ceasefire fails to hold, the distance between a truce and a full-scale war gets shorter. Subscribe to WLA for daily geopolitical analysis.